Hi, today I'm doing a Harvest Moon fall scene for beginners. This is the kind of paint I use. It's Rio Tech. I'm also using some folk art floating clear medium. To begin, I have some phthalo blue, white, and clear medium on my palette. And I'm going to use this 2-inch flat craft bristle brush. So I've wet my brush and dried it with a towel. And I'm going to begin with a little bit of clear medium and lots of blue. And I'm going to start up my corners, make them really dark. Now you can apply it any way you want. You can apply it like this. But kind of, we want it to end by being a little bit round where our moon's going. Leave a little bit of a light spot. So I'm using this little X back and forth function. So a good thing to remember is when you're applying paint into your canvas, you want to push it fairly hard, get it right in there, and then if you want to blend and smooth it, you go a little bit lighter. And you can stop about 3/4 of the way down. Make sure all your canvas is covered. If you want to paint your edges, you can do that now or later. So now I'm just going to go into my white. And I'm going to start in the middle of the area I left for my moon, and I'm going to work outward in a circle. And I'm going to go right over the blue and just keep going till my brush is getting dry. Don't go back in the middle. Still in the outer. Now go into just my white again. Start in the middle. And go out. And this time I'm going to go out even further and leave those edges dark in the corners. This is now dry brushing. My brush is pretty dry. Back into my white, and I'm going to start right in the center of where I want my moon to be and work it. And every time you do this, you lighten your sky up a little bit more. don't want to go too light because it is a nighttime scene. Once my brush is dry, go a little lighter. Now I can wipe my brush off with my towel to get most of that paint off and blend those edges a little bit. Leaving that outside nice and dark. Okay, so now we're gonna let this dry before we put our Harvest Moon on because it's got some yellow in it, and yellow and blue make green. Okay, I cleaned my brush and dried it really well, and I'm going to go into just the straight dark blue now. And I'm gonna dab it in so I get, and I'm going to make a bit of a horizon line. So if I turn my brush sideways, I can make some distant evergreens. Push my brush up, do different things with it. And it'll look like background trees. Back and forth, different ways. I like to go up on the edges and make it look sort of like there's hills going up. And I'm going to turn my brush sideways and fill some of that in, nice and dark. And bring it right in. I'm going to want a pond back here, so I'm just going to turn my brush this way, just back and forth. And don't worry about how big, because we're going to put some bushes around it to create the distance. But like that. And come down a bit farther than you have to, so that you know you've come down far enough. Now I want to make a bit of a reflection on my water before I go ahead and put the bushes in front. I got a clean brush and some white, and I'm just going to drag it through. I don't want too much on, just so I can under where the moon's going to be. I'll put the moon over to the side a bit. I'm just going to, oops, just going to make some marks across the water. Now you want these straight. I've got them a bit crooked, so I'm going to have to do it again. The water always lays flat. Okay, so now I'm going to let that dry a bit, and I'll put some more reflections on it. Now I'm going to go back to my dark blue. Continue with my bushes coming down. Now the ones in front would go in over that water edge. So continue down, a little bit of a slope down, so it looks like this is the foreground. And don't forget to put the background on first. Right here, I'm going to round this off a little. Maybe shouldn't have took all that off. I'm just going to go back in with my white on my brush. There we go. It's not easy to do. If you get too much coming off. Good. I think while I'm here, there. Okay. I want some hanging over that are on this side of the pond. And then now that I've got my brush turned this way, kind of looks like grass. Just bring your color all the way down. Don't forget to go right to your edges. Hard and it pushes the paint right into the canvas. We'll be highlighting this to give it some dimension after. So you want them covered pretty much to have most of that white away. Leave a little bit, very little. Bring that up. Make sure my bottom's covered. Edges if you want. So my water doesn't look straight on the camera, but it actually is straight in relation to my canvas. So I'm going to use the same brush with my blue on, and I'm going to dab it into the white. And I'm just going to touch where things would be lit up a little bit from the moon in the distance. Don't want too much out there because it's the distance. And that'll dry a little darker, so I'm just going to dab a bit of that white away. Some highlights. Okay, that's enough for the background. Foreground, I'm just going to put some highlights on the bushes in front of the pond. Just some highlights. You don't want to cover up all your dark color, so now if you want to have a path coming in at all, now would be the time to do it. So I'm going to put lots. I've got a little bristly filbert brush. I'm going to put lots of blue on. Start off with it dark, so from a distance. And I'm just getting bigger as I come forward. Let it disappear, so it goes back a ways. Now with a little bit of white, I'll just highlight that. Probably add some brown to this later. And just add weight until you feel like it looks good. And then you might want to add a little bit of highlight along the path. See how that little bit sticking up there gives it depth? You don't want to do too much because then you cover up all your dark. So now this is nice and dry, and I'm going to add my harvest moon, which would be yellow with a little bit of orange. And this is going to be the background. I'm going to have branches of the trees coming across. I have a 1-inch bristly brush, I've wet it and dried it with my towel really well. We don't want to add water because then our paint will run together instead of blending nice. So I put a little orange in quite a bit of yellow on a plate, and I want to do this fairly dry. So I don't want too much on my brush at a time. A lot more yellow than orange. And I'm going to go right to the center of where I want my moon to be and go out from there, just like we did with the white. And I'm just going to lightly go outward. With a little bit more orange in there. I want some orange. And this is called dry brushing, and it's just where your brush is pretty dry and you're just wisping on another color. And I'm just going to keep going outward. And it's okay if you have little streaks, it'll just look like little clouds back there. It's really pretty. So I'm pushing pretty hard to get some of that orange and yellow off my brush now. Right down here. And you can even put a little bit right into your blue almost. Okay. Now with a little more. I'm just going to go in the center. I'm just going to add some where I think I would like some. I think it'd be nice. Everything dries a little darker, so go a little brighter than you think you're going to want. There. I think that's good. But I'm going to use this craft sponge, and it makes a nice blend of the orange and yellow for the harvest moon. So first I'm going to twirl my paint in the yellow. Got lots of yellow. It is a moon, not a sun, but it's a harvest moon, so. And I've got some orange on there now. I'm going to twist that in. Take a look at what I got. And get it on. And to make it nice and bright, I'm going to add a little white and yellow. Make some light yellow as well. Okay, so I have the white and the orange and the yellow on my sponge. I'm going to put it right where I want it to be. sort of central of the area I prepared. Push it on, and the important part is turning it so that it gets nice and round. Turn it a little bit and then lift. I like that. And now I'm just gonna turn my sponge this way and dab it to take out those little sponge spots. Don't want to interfere with the edges. That's kind of pretty. Now that's going to have branches over it, so I think that's all the detail we really need on there. So if your moon's too dark, you can add some yellow and white and brighten it up. If it's too yellow or too white, add a little bit of orange on your sponge, and you can repeat this. I have a small flat brush. It's about 1/4 inch. And what I want is the nice sharp edge on it. And I'm going to run it through my yellow and orange. Keep it nice and sharp. And I'm going to make some marks in the water underneath the moon. I want these to go back and forth. Nice little sharp lines, so. Start off just bringing some down. And then step back and look at it and make sure you're right under your moon. So this would be the center. And then bring it out from there. Again, I'm trying to keep my brush nice and sharp, and that's by loading it this way. I'm just going to bend down so you can see what I'm doing. I'm holding it straight out to make a nice little sharp line. I'm not touching very hard. And they're going to be really bright right under the moon and then fade out. And we're going to put some white ones over this so we don't have to overdo it right now. Now I'm going to go into a little bit of white and yellow, make it a few of those, just to brighten it up. And you can add a few of these lines right across your pond. Try to keep them going pretty straight across, nice and sharp. Bring them over, we can put some highlight on top of that to make it set it back again. Across a bit. We'll put highlight over that. So I've got my brush that I started with, and I'm dabbing into some orange and yellow. A bit of white into that mixture. I'm just going to touch the tops of the trees under the moon, where the moon would be cast some of its light. And it would be along here as well. Don't want to overdo it too much, but there we go. A little bit here. Along the path. I'm just highlighting a little bit with this color. Okay, great. So that gives it a nice little highlight of the moon shining on the surrounding landscape. Well, I've turned my painting to the side a little so that you can see how I hold the brush. Okay, I have a 1/2 inch flat brush. And I'm going to make a tree coming up here, and I want some branches to go across the moon, and then I'm going to put some birch trees on this side. Okay, so I started my tree here with my camera off, so I'm going to redo what I did. So I have some black, brown, and white on my palette, and a flat 1/2 inch brush, and I've wet it and dried it with my towel. And I'm going to take some black and some white and make a dark gray like that. And then I'm going to take some brown and add it in. And I can leave that streaky. So now I'm going to wipe my brush off. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to go through that and load it flat. I'm going to load it flat and well loaded. And then 1/2 of it, I'm going to go through some white. And that's how I'll load it every time. Okay, so I'm going to start on this side of my tree so that I can pay attention to where I place it and then build my tree towards the back. So with my flat brush, I'm going to have the white, my highlight, always towards the moon. I'm going to start about halfway where I want my tree to be. And I'm just going to come down. See how I have my brush straight out from the canvas? I'm not pushing too hard. And I'm just going to make some root, a long root there. Then I'm just going to go up and do the same thing. My brush gets dry, it's okay. I'll just go back and reload it. Same way every time. So I'm going to just go along, make another branch. Can come to the end of the branches. Some are going to go right off. If there is a fine branch, start anywhere. You can redo some. Run up. Now go very lightly to thin it out. Thin out your branch. When you come to the tip, lift your brush up onto just a few. Maybe I'll do one this way to show you. So I would be straight out from the canvas, but I'm going to do this to show you. Go. And when I want it to end, I'm just going to lift it like that. In places where I want it thicker, I push harder. So now I've loaded my brush, keeping it nice and flat, and I'm going to build a few more branches in the back and work down my trunk. And this might have, you know, like maybe another root coming off here. Still. And we'll work on this trunk highlighting and putting some dark colors on it after. Right now I'm worried about placing my branches. Now I need some branches in behind, so I'm gonna take this one right off. And I'm gonna work on a few in behind, because then my front ones I can just go right across. And I'll build a little bit more of my tree. And just work on this slowly, have fun. Use a little bit more highlight there. I'm just going to put a little bit more highlight on my brush and go over that one. The light does hit some branches more than others. Here's one I want in the background as well. I think I'm going to bring this one like that and then place that one back in front. And I think I am just going to put one back here that's in the background. And I think I'll bring this one down. Another root. Now I'm going to take this small size 4 liner brush. I'm going to add some water to some of the dark paint. Roll it through. You want it to be a little bit muckier so that it glides, but you don't want it to drip. So now just go up and add a little bit of little wiggly branches. Just by touching it lightly and wiggling them out. And I just want the background ones in this time. Just adds a nice little effect if you add some dark ones. And you can even run through a little highlight and add on to those dark ones if you want. Right here I'm just going to have this one break. Okay, so now you can load up your other flat brush, go through your light. And you can make sure you have the ones you want in front. So you just go over top of the ones that you want. And then I'll highlight that little bit of the top of the tree that shows that it's in the front. Bring that one right across. And that's how you add some dimension, by bringing some right in front. Dark on there. So just add as many branches as you want. Make sure some look like they're behind. And some look like they're in front. So now I got some black and brown on my brush. And I'm just going to cast a shadow on the backs of some of these branches. And I'm also going to take that right down the back of my tree. And I can widen it at this time if I want. And I'm going to make my brush nice and sharp. And I'm going to just add little low lights all the way down the trunk. Especially between the and then I'm going to blend that back shadow a little. And I'm just going to put some of those back shadows here and there. Okay, again, my camera didn't start, so what I've done is I've made some really light gray, almost white, and I have my liner brush again, and I added some water, and I'm going to run it through. And I'm just highlighting some of these branches on the side of the moon, so you can see I've added a little bit of light on them, on this side, and it just adds a nice little finishing touch. So I'm going to keep doing that. And it's also, I'm adding tips to my branches at this time too. And the odd little branch that might just appear to be really light gray. That one. down my tree, on the side of the moon. So the branches that are in front, some are behind, but they're all going to be touched by the light, so just and just keep looking at it until you feel like you've had enough. Some you can leave dark, some you can lighten up. And I took most of it off my brush so I could have it a little bit dry. I might just bring a little bit of highlights down the tree, especially at the tops of the roots. And don't cover up all the dark, but okay, so I have a little filbert brush, the bristly one. I'm going to put a little bit of brown and gray coming down the path. Okay, so I'm gonna leave most of it there. I just want to touch it here and there. Some of the white and the blue showing. I don't want to mess up where I've put this, so I can just sort of add this as a shadow color. I'm just dry brushing down the path. I add a little white to that. A little bit of white. Okay, so I've taken a little bit of that gray and white and added a little bit of blue to it. And I'm just going to mix it. I have a 3/4 inch flat brush and I've wet it and dried it on my towel. So I have my mixture of gray and white and a little phthalo blue and a pile of white there. And I'm going to make my birch trees a little bit farther back than this tree, and I'm going to have them coming up here. So first of all, I'm going to put lots of white on. And then I'm going to go through the dark, just like I usually do the other way around, but this time I'm going to do white and then go through the dark color. Make my first birch tree come from right about here. So I'm going to put my finger there, start it up in the sky. So I'm just going to touch lightly first. This time I'm going to come down. You could also go up, but since I want a nice point on my birch trees, I'm going to start at the top. So I'm going to touch it, and as I come down, to get it thicker, I'm going to push harder. And then if you don't go all the way down, you just reload. And just continue on. Push until you get where you want to go and stop. And we'll thicken these up as we finish them off. I'm going to load up again. This time I'm going to get a little bit of dark in it, but that's okay. Run it through the dark on one side. And I'll start one right about here. Stop it right about there. Reload. Don't worry if the dark doesn't come through because we're going to add to it. And we're just putting where we want it. Okay. This one we'll take right off the top. And then right here, I'm going to put touch light and put a smaller branch. Also goes right off. Right here. I'm going to wipe most of the white off. With most of the white off of my brush, I'm going to go through some of the dark. I'm going to turn my brush this way. And all the way up, I'm going to touch the back. And pull it over in a little tiny bit of a smile shape, depending on how thick you have to go, but just to cast a shadow there and make it look a little more like a tree. So now I'm going to add a little bit more dark to that, a little bit more of the dark color. And you don't want it really mixed well because it's alright if it's a bit streaky. Okay, so I added a little bit more blue. I'm just going to touch it, bring it across a little, up to about there. Do it on the big one. If it starts to show some sort of pattern, you can go over it. Remember, you want a shadow on this side, so get a little bit of dark coming in. Every once in a while, maybe a little bit of brown. It's okay to go over it and add some different things in it, so you don't have to get it on the first try. Okay, so right here, I'm going to go off with a little bit of white on there and just go off with another branch. I'm going to touch very lightly this time. You could also do that with a liner brush. I think it'd take a lot of practice to do it with this one, but I just seen an opportunity there to add one. Now these are birch trees, so we're not going to have a lot of big branches. Okay. So I'm adding some back shadow. I want a little bit of brown on my brush, a little white here and there. Mostly the darker back of the tree. Now I'm going to change position on the camera so I can show you how to do the front of the trees. Okay, I'm going to wipe off most of the paint on my brush. Leave some on. And now I'm going to go into mostly white. And just touch it very lightly into your dark color just to get a little bit on there. And I'm going to go up. It's in a weird position, but I'm going to touch the front of my trees and bring a little smiley streak back. Just a tiny smile shape. And then we'll bring this together with the detail. The light would be shining on this side, so if you got it too plain of white, just go and get a little bit of dark. And remember, it's gonna dry darker. So go a little lighter than you think you want to. See, I'm not coming straight across, I'm just going in a little bit of a smile shape to make it look like the tree is round. Leave that back shadow. So white, put a little color in it. Oops. Sometimes if you do that, you just have to make a bump on your tree. And you can skip little spots here and there, leave some shadow. A little blue in it, a little brown once in a while. A little mixture of the brown and blue and the white. And go right up your tree. Come up here. A little bit of white, light gray that I watered down with my liner brush. I'm just going to add a few more branches up here. Wiggly ones. And I'm just going to add a couple little twigs coming up with baby trees growing. So now with my liner brush, I've got some water and I'm making some really wet black. And I'm going to roll my brush in it and make a point. And I'm just going to go up my birch trees and make little lines across. Make them a little bit rounded so it looks like your tree is rounded. Both sides, some go right across, some don't. All the way up. And then every once in a while I'm going to make a spot. And birch trees often have those little spots where branches have fallen off. Make some of those. And you can do it pretty fast. Just okay, so now I got some white with my liner brush. I'm going to leave it a little bit thick. And I'm just going to do the same thing with some white lines across. I'll just make it look really nice. Mostly at the front of the tree. I have a very small flat brush. You could use a liner brush. I'm going to put some lines across the water, and a small flat brush will make it a little bit easier to make a straight line. So you make it nice and flat. I'm just going to make some water lines where it would be touching the shore. And it's a pond, so it might come around like that. Some lines can be back here. Look farther away. Some closer, and these shores would be closer. But make sure your lines are as horizontal as you can get them. Okay, so under my moon, I'm going to have some pretty heavy-duty white lines. I should have this straight out from my canvas. It's hard in my position here, but straighter out, and the sharper your little flat brush, the nicer, the thinner your lines will be. I'm just going to put them all over just to make sure it looks like water. With a little bit on my brush, I'm just going to go along and make a few highlights on the path. For my leaves, I'm going to use these little sea sponges. Okay, I'm going to do the birch tree first, and I'm going to do it with dark crimson, bright red, and yellow on my palette. So I don't want to put too much on, just a few leaves. So I'm going to dab onto the color, and then dab on my plate and make sure, or my palette, just going to put a little bit of this up here. Some of it has to be in front of the tree, so it would be on this side. If there's a place you really like, don't cover it. If there's a place you don't like, this is a good time to cover it up. Okay, now I'm going to go into some of the bright red, and I'm going to just leave what I had on there on. I'm going to make sure I dab it off really well. And I'm just going to touch those little groups and add light to them. Touch them on the side of the light source, which is the harvest moon. Now I'm going to go into a tiny bit of yellow. without cleaning my sponge out. I'm just going to touch very lightly on only the ones that the light would be hitting now. I don't want to change the color, I just want to add some highlight. There we go. So now I'm going to mix those colors together. Some dark, some bright red, a little bit of yellow. And I'm going to make some that fell. And I don't want them to look like flowers, so try not to make them look the same. Closer they are, the bigger they'd be, so you push a little harder on your sponge. It's a good way to set your trees down into the ground as well. And some fell off. Some went. Some fell out of the path onto the. Make sure you make some on your path that have blown out. Just take your time so you don't overdo it, and put them where you think they should go. If you want another yellow one, just dab into the yellow a little bit. You can add maybe a tiny bit on these ones, but I wouldn't put too much. Pretty young. Okay. So I have yellow ochre and brown that I'm going to mix together. Some yellow ochre, some yellow, and a tiny bit of orange on my palette for the trees, the leaves for this tree. Okay, so I have a different sponge, and I'm going to start out by mixing these together, and I'm going to pat most of it off. And I just want a small area. I'm going to hold my sponge so that I have a lot of control. Make a small spot and test it first. Okay. Now some are going to go across, don't just go between. You want to cover some spots on this so that you have leaves in the foreground. Now this I just want to touch slightly. Perfect. I don't want to put too much on those. I'm just selecting spots with my ochre and brown. I don't want to cover up everything, so I'm being a bit careful. Okay, leaving that color on my sponge, I'm going to go into some yellow now and a tiny bit of orange. I'm going to dab most of it off so I can control where it's going. Kind of closest to the moon. It's highlighted. So now I'm going to put some leaves that fell from this tree with my ochre and brown. And there's going to be a little bit of the yellow and orange on there. Concentrate like they fell in into little piles in between the roots. For my final touches, I've got this little sponge, small pattern, and I'm just going to add a few little fall leaves in the background, not too many. And do a little bit of the red color as well back here. Don't want so much that it's going to take over here. Just a little bit. I'm going to use my liner brush with a little bit of yellow and ochre, and I'm just going to bring up a little bit of grass here. Just so that you can really see that that's in front of the water. So here's our finished Harvest Moon painting. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, give me a thumbs up to let me know. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And thank you for watching.